Dr Joe McGirr is the independent MP for the seat of Wagga Wagga. Thanks for joining us on Flow today.
No, thank you very much for having me.
Now, we noticed you've got this petition running about a Department for Rural Health. You come to this with some local medical experience yourself.
Look, I do. I've actually practiced as a doctor in the region here for over 30 years, emergency doctor, and then managing hospitals and the health service, in fact, before I came into Parliament. So I've seen a lot of improvements, I've got to say, in rural health in that time. But it's pretty clear from the upper house inquiry we just had and the stories that we hear from folk that there's a lot more to be done. And I just think we've got a good health department in New South Wales. We've now got a rural health minister. Well, let's have a rural health department to make sure that we get the services we need in our regions, which are unfortunately still lagging behind.
Now, when you mention a Department for Rural Health, I imagine there's an element within New South Wales Health that performs something of that function, but you want it to stand alone?
Look, we have our local health districts, and I'm not suggesting we change them, but they report back to Sydney, and the orders basically come out of Sydney, and the solutions come out of Sydney. And I just think that our issues are different, and I think they need a special focus. We're still lacking in many of our hospitals. We still don't have doctors, and they often go without doctors, for example, on the weekends. Now, I can't believe that we can't get a solution to that. We're graduating more doctors almost than any other country in the world per head of population, and yet we still have gaps. And I just think it needs a bit of focus from the top brains, and at the moment, they're in Sydney. They see the world from Sydney. I'd like to see a department located in the regions getting first-hand experience of what we're going through and tackling these really important issues.
Now, I imagine a Department of Rural Health will also see the commonalities, say, with workforce shortages, not just on the doctor front, but, say, with nurses and other health professionals?
I wouldn't be surprised if the solutions that come up in one area can go to another area. I think that's exactly right. Again, it's about saying, okay, the solutions that people use in one part of the state, in the city, aren't the same as the solutions that are going to work out here. And we need to think of different solutions to those problems, and they're continuing to cause issues for us. So that's an important component part of this. Another important part of it is that we need an advocate, someone in our corner when it comes to the decisions the government made. And a good example of that is the situation a few years ago where the government decided to put autopsies in Newcastle, and that meant that people who'd lost their loved ones here had to wait weeks while the studies were on their loved ones' bodies in Newcastle. Now, that decision was made, and I just don't think there was any thinking about how that would affect people here. So we need someone in our corner as well, back in Sydney, when these decisions are made.
Now, I imagine also the population balance in a state like New South Wales. You've got a huge number of people that live in regions. Indeed, your own electorate, Wagga Wagga, seems to be one of the booming areas when it comes to population.
I think we're going to see more population in the regions. I think the COVID situation has woken people up to, one, the joys of living in the regional areas, two, the great opportunities that exist here because there is quite a lot of investment going on. And for many people, let's face it, COVID has shown them that they can work remotely. They don't need to be in a big city. They can enjoy all the benefits of living in the regions and still, Zoom in or whatever it is they need to do with their work with some of these larger organisations. So I see a boom. It's already started. We know we've got a boom in the regions because we've got housing shortages and we've got many companies that can't find workers. Now, part of that, of course, is lack of migration, and that will get slightly better, but there's no doubt our regions are booming. And look, I will give credit to the government. The infrastructure has improved out of sight in the last 10 years, but as people tell me, the services are what's falling behind. They don't have boots on the ground. They don't have doctors in their hospitals. They don't have drug and alcohol and mental health services, and that's what we need to build up in our regions.
Now, just lastly, you'd advocated previously when lockdowns were easing in metropolitan Sydney, people coming out that maybe the government needed to just take it a bit slower than they were planning. Just looking back in hindsight, how do you think things have gone in terms of exposure to the regions with COVID-19?
Look, I think we're getting through COVID now. We're coming out the other side of it. I mean, I'd never say we're fully through COVID because, boy, hasn't it thrown us some curveballs in the last couple of years. But it looks like we're getting through it now. The Omicron variant that came just before Christmas really put a spanner in the works for all of us. And so, look, I think we're through it, but it's been pretty messy. And I know there was a lot of frustration, particularly in my area over the Christmas period. Couldn't travel, couldn't get test results, long queues, uncertainty about isolation. So we're through it now. Okay, we needed to get through it. Not pretty, an ugly sort of process, but I'm hopeful now that we can move on and hopefully get back to some sense of normality.
All right, Dr Joe McGirr, thanks for joining us today. We'll like to talk with you further. You're in one of the fastest growing regional areas in the nation. Thanks for joining us today.
No problem. Thank you very much for the chance.